Well, hasn't it been great hearing from Mary and the other eyewitnesses? David did a great job of tracking them down and getting interviews for us. And who would have thought they had the technology to record their stories like that back in those days? Actually, that ancient technology was pretty reliable. You'll not find any fake news in the Gospel of Luke. He carefully investigated everything, using the testimony of those who were eyewitnesses to present a reliable record of what happened on that first Easter. He did this to reassure people who'd never seen Jesus, like his friend Theophilus and us, that the good news about Jesus could be accepted with certainty. Good news. We could certainly do with some of that these days. And that's exactly what the story of Easter is. Good news. So let's have a look at what happened on that very first Easter Sunday. As we heard from Mary, the women got up early that day, very early. It was probably still dark when they left the house, and they made their way to the tomb. It was risky, but they were determined to finish the work of preparing Jesus' body for burial. When they got there, they found that the stone had been rolled away. Perhaps they were thinking that Joseph had gone back too, so they went into the tomb. But there was no one there, no one, not even the body of Jesus. They were utterly at a loss, wondering on what on earth was going on. And suddenly the tomb was filled with light, angels in clothes that gleamed like lightning, and the women were, quite understandably, terrified. But they recover quickly enough to absorb what the angels are saying to them. First, a question. Why do you look for the living among the dead? Maybe while the women were still thinking about how to answer that, the angels made a short statement. He is not here. He is risen. What? How? Or maybe the women weren't asking questions. They were just standing there in stunned silence. Until the angel spoke again, reminding the women of what Jesus had said back in Galilee, that he would be crucified, but raised again on the third day. At this point, still in the tomb, surrounded by light, fear giving way to faith, the women remembered Jesus' words. They had listened to his teaching. They hadn't understood at the time, but now they get it. It's a light bulb moment. Well, lightning clothes moment. Utterly transformed, they knew what to do next. Tell the disciples. So Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary the mother of James, and the others with them head back into Jerusalem and share this amazing news with the apostles. Now, it took longer for the men to get it. Let's face it, it often does, doesn't it? But they too would realize soon enough that Jesus was alive. Let's think for a minute about that light bulb moment. What was it that turned their sorrow to joy, their fear to faith? I think the answer is in verse 8. Then they remembered his words. Under pressure, when we're stressed or upset, or when things are going wrong, it can be easy to forget what we've been taught. Anyone who's sat an exam can testify to that. And I'm sure a few of you are nodding and smiling, recalling those brain freeze moments. Forgetting what you're supposed to remember reminded me a bit of the beginning of the Narnia book, The Silver Chair, when Aslan gives Jill the signs by which he will guide her on her quest. Oh, by the way, suggested lockdown activity for you. Reread the Chronicles of Narnia. And if you've never read them, get a copy and read them. Okay, back to the silver chair. And Aslan says to Jill, remember, remember, remember the signs. And whatever strange things may happen to you, let nothing turn your mind from following the signs. Secondly, I give you a warning. Here on the mountain I have spoken to you clearly. I will not often do so down in Narnia. Here on the mountain the air is clear. As you drop down into Narnia, the air will thicken. Take great care that it does not confuse your mind. And the signs which you have learned here will not look at all as you expect them to look when you meet them there. That is why it is so important to know them by heart and pay no attention to appearances. Remember the signs and believe the signs. Nothing else matters. Strange things had been happening to Jesus and his followers that first Easter. I wonder what the women were thinking as they made their way to the garden tomb. They had experienced devastating loss. Now they were bewildered by the empty tomb and then terrified as the angels appeared beside them. It's no wonder that the women had forgotten what Jesus had told them back in Galilee. But standing in that empty tomb, prompted by the angels, the women remember his words. Hope rises. Grief gives way to joy. Devastating loss, bewilderment, fear. These feelings are very real for us right now, and no wonder. But when the darkness closes in, when our questions appear to have no answers, when we don't understand what is happening, we need to remember his words. I wonder if any words of Jesus are coming to your mind right now. When I was preparing this talk, the first thing I thought was, well, I wonder what Jesus said at the height of the crisis, even when he was on the cross. So I looked back into Luke chapter 23 to remind myself. And here are two of the things that Jesus said on the cross. Father, forgive them. And to tell you the truth, today you will be with me in paradise. Now, I'm not sure how you're coping with lockdown. I guess we're all facing different challenges. For some, it will be surviving weeks and weeks of having no one to play with but your brothers and sisters. Be patient, guys, and be excellent to each other. For others, there may well be a crushing sense of loneliness, a silence that is filled all too easily by the voices of doubt and despair. Maybe your sin is weighing heavily on you. You're beginning to wonder whether God really loves you. Remember his words. You are forgiven. Let the light of his love flood in and dispel the darkness. For many of us, particularly the younger generations, this is a time we're being confronted with death like never before. Heartbreaking stories, daily updates about how many fatalities there have been. People facing up to the ultimate statistic that 100% of us will die. Well, what a moment to celebrate Easter. What a moment to grasp that there is hope beyond the grave. Remember his words. Paradise, heaven. It's real. And our hope of being there with Jesus is real too. I'm not sure how the current crisis has touched your life, but like the women on that first Easter morning, I am certain that there is hope. Christ is risen. Grief will give way to joy. And in the meantime, remember his words. It can be easy to forget. So let's take a moment now to reflect and ask God to bring to our minds a promise that he has made in the Bible. Have you thought of one? I'd love to know what verses you're thinking of, but we can't share them with each other right now. But here's what I'd like us to do. I'm sure you'll have seen some of the rainbow pictures in the windows of the houses near you. Maybe you've done one and put it up in your window yourselves. Well, to help us remember God's words, I have a small challenge for you. Now, this is an all-age service, so this activity is for all ages. Later today, or sometime in the next few days, I invite you to draw a picture of a rainbow and then write in it a promise that God has given us in his word. Like this. This is one that I did. And I put the verse that I talked about on the Sandyford chat the other week from Isaiah 43. Do not be afraid, for I have redeemed you. I have summoned you by name. You are mine. And Isaiah goes on to talk about how even through the waters and even through the fire, God will be with us. What I'd like you to do is, once you've done your picture, take a photo of it and then email it to inquiries@sandyfordhenderson.net. Okay, so draw your picture, take a photo, send it to the church email address, and I'll take all the pictures you send in and put together a presentation for next Sunday morning. And then we can all enjoy the verses that have encouraged us today and this week. Oh, and after you've sent your picture in, why not put it up in your window to let other people know about the amazing promises of God? And as we remember God's words this Easter, may our hearts be filled with peace and with joy and with hope. So let's celebrate the fact that Jesus is alive with our final song, Christ is risen. He is risen indeed.